China just offered Africa the key to end neo-colonialism. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly what China is offering, not only for Africa as a continent, but every African nation individually. It is something that the West, America, Europe have tried to hold back ever since they set foot on African soil. It is the unspoken biggest fear of the West. And if African leaders simply accept and align with this Chinese offer, Africa will reach a new state of prosperity. On top of that, those that to this day continue to exploit Africa will begin to lose their ability to do so. So if you care about the development of the continent of Africa, this video is for you. If you don't know me, my name is TJ, I'm Nigerian and British mixed, and on this channel, we talk about African geopolitics. This year, there have been more China-Africa summits and conferences than ever before. China is relentlessly engaging the continent, both at the African Union level, regional blocs, as well as individual countries as well. And the wider global South no longer view America as a stable or reliable partner. As we've seen from Donald Trump, at any moment, the United States can change or cancel its trade agreements, creating huge economic consequences, instability, and uncertainty, which nobody, including China, likes at all. For China, this means it must secure a central position in global trade. If it wants to reduce its dependence on the biggest economic market in the world, America, then the developing world must grow fast enough to absorb the losses created by tariffs and aggressive tactics the United States is currently using. This is why China needs to become friends with Africa. It needs China to become richer and more developed. A stronger Africa means stronger trade. And if Africa unlocks its consumer market, sells its goods and services at higher prices, it will become more wealthy, increasing its advancement. And that's good business for China. In other words, China has a vested interest in the development of Africa. So what is this offer I'm talking about that China has just made that will end neo-colonialism? Well, let's watch the Chinese African Union ambassador, Zhuang Feng, who just gave an explicit speech with their offer just a few days ago.
Industrialization is the only way to Africa's economic revitalization. Accelerating the process is a key for Africa to transform its resource endowments into development momentum and achieve economic diversification and sustainable prosperity. We are very pleased to see that under the guidance of the African Union's Agenda 2063 and the Action Plan for Accelerated Industrial Development of Africa, African countries are making progress on this path. Second, industrialization represents the dream and legitimate rights of African people. The development borders imposed from outside do not fit Africa's realities and only constrain its space to independently explore modernization. At present, unilateralism and economic coercion practiced by some major countries have posed new challenges to Africa's industrialization efforts. Third, as you know, China has always been a sincere partner in Africa's industrialization journey. As an important member of the Global South, China advocates that the developing country should draw independently their development blueprints. Since 2013, China has successfully proposed the Belt and Road Initiative, the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, the Global Civilization Initiative, and the Global Governance Initiative, working hand in hand with Africa to safeguard jointly common right to development. Therefore, the theme of this seminar not only reflects Africa's practical needs, but also echoes the shared vision of China and Africa to advance modernization together. Looking forward, China stands ready to work with the African Union and African countries to implement the initiative on supporting Africa's industrialization and the outcomes of the FOCAC Beijing Summit, and to promote Africa's industrialization in a green, coordinated, and sustainable manner.
So there you have it. China is explicitly proposing to partner with African nations to build manufacturing capacity. And that's the key, assisting with helping Africa gain the ability to transform raw materials into value-added products and strengthen industrial foundations. As many of you know already, the West's strategy has always been to lock Africa into raw mineral extraction only. The bare minimal infrastructure was put in place simply to pull out those resources only, and very little else. This strips the continent of the real economic value because the biggest profits come from processing, manufacturing, and selling finished products. To make matters worse, those same finished products are then sold back to Africa at far higher prices. And whenever an African nation pushes back or tries to change that system, the response is predictable. That's when on the news you'll hear civil conflict, military coups, destabilization, riots, and in the case of Libya, the head of state taken out into the streets and killed. If you listen to the Chinese ambassador, he captured this reality in a very professional and diplomatic way. He said economic coercion by some countries has posed challenges to Africa's industrialization. We all know exactly what and who he's referring to. Many of you have dropped comments asking how you can support this channel, even offering to donate or help financially. Until recently, I had no way to make this possible. But now through my Substack, it's never been easier for you to lend me some support. There's a free tier where you'll get 1 email per week, and for just $5 a month, about the price of a nice coffee, you'll receive a daily written update from all of my content, everything I produce. I'll be engaging with those of you who join, asking your thoughts on how to serve you and the continent better. Sometimes my videos do get demonetized, and there's also a small chance, as we saw with the Platform Africa stream, that a channel like this could be deplatformed. Even if the worst happens, we can regroup, rebuild, and keep pushing forward. We don't want any third party controlling this message, so with email backing us up, we can communicate directly. Thank you in advance for signing up. I look forward to connecting with you, not just on YouTube, but via email as well. You see, a real manufacturing base is the single biggest threat to neo-colonialism. Why? Because it cuts out the entire dependency structure that external powers rely on. When Africa processes its own minerals, it controls the pricing, the supply, the technology, the jobs. It becomes a producer instead of the supplier of cheap raw minerals. It becomes the negotiator instead of the beggar. It flips the global power dynamic and makes it much harder for any foreign country to bully, sanction, or manipulate Africa through resource dependency. This is also why a manufacturing base acts as a deterrent against foreign military intervention or puppet leadership, because when a country only exports raw minerals, outside powers can easily use force instead of compliant leaders and keep nations locked in extraction. This intervention strategy is even more potent when the minerals are not excavated whatsoever. They're under the ground, under villages and farms, with no industrial activity around to complicate invasions. Once factories, jobs, and value-added industries exist on ground, any invasion or destabilization will destroy that economy's ecosystem. It becomes far more costly, far more complex, and far less attractive for foreign powers to interfere, because they can no longer strip resources without collapsing the very infrastructure that gives those resources value. Look what's happening right now in places like Sudan and northern Nigeria. These attacks happen in the vast undeveloped areas, and that contributes to the ability for the world to simply look away. But if those regions were industrial hubs, vibrant and filled with factories, CCTV, multinational companies, major investors and stakeholders, the cost and global visibility of any attack would skyrocket. It would be far harder for militants or outside actors to target those areas without triggering heightened international outrage and disrupt global supply chains, which affects the West. Without this offering of industrialization and the development there, so Africa will never have any real leverage in the global marketplace. Leverage in the global marketplace translates to independence and power. And this is what the controllers of the African continent do not want. And this offer, by the way, coming from China, isn't coming just from one ambassador. As I mentioned earlier, the past 6 months has seen an unprecedented wave of Chinese-Africa summits and conferences. These include the Forum of Africa-China Cooperation, which is where the clip you watched earlier comes from, the Chinese-Africa Partnership Conference, the Global South Media think tank. On top of that, there's been countless bilateral meetings at the continental level, through the African Union and regional blocs, along with continuous engagement involving individual African nations. And that still doesn't account for the endless stream of bilateral visits, online events, webinars, private sector meetings, and summits happening throughout the year. And just to make it abundantly clear, this push for value addition assistance is not an isolated offer. The Chinese ambassador to Namibia, Xiao Weiping, made the same pledge in a Namibia conference just last week.
First, I want to emphasize we fully understand your aspiration for your industrialization and modernization, and of course, value addition. That's very important for your economy. Yeah. So, the Chinese government, supports our enterprises to also pay special attention to your voices in this, in local beneficiation and also value addition.
We've all heard African leaders speak a good game about value addition for years, yet I've never heard an ambassador from a foreign state, a head of state, or a top official from any Western country use that phrase specifically. I mean, do you remember when Donald Trump met up with those 5 African presidents earlier this year?
We also want our raw materials to be processed locally in our countries so that we can create value and to create jobs for youth so that they stop dying. They are crossing the sea, the ocean, to go to other countries.
When the president of Guinea spoke to him, he used the phrase value addition, and Trump just completely ignored it. Instead, he talked about making deals around selling weapons. And this has been the Western status quo for decades. Not one of those presidents from that meeting has discussed any value addition development since that meeting. Meanwhile, today, 2 Chinese ambassadors, one at the national level and one at the African Union level, have both made clear and public commitments to support Africa, building value addition capacity explicitly. This is what I've always advocated for, to be a core requirement in any agreement with a foreign government. Raw material extraction should only be allowed if the group, company, organization, or country extracting those minerals provides training, development, finances to that same industry so that development can happen on African soil as well. The price of extraction should be the development of our ability to refine those products. That must be a firm, non-negotiable condition in any trade happening in the continent involving resource raw minerals. Now, for those of you who might be skeptical and you say, should we really trust China? Well, the first thing to ask is, do we really trust the West? These are the countries with a clear record of slavery, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. Countries that still maintain colonial era infrastructure and architecture, predatory economic systems, and control via sanctions across the continent. Countries that refuse to return stolen artifacts that were taken during slavery and colonial rule. Countries that in some cases still are unwilling to acknowledge atrocities committed during those periods. Countries that maintain multiple military bases all over the continent. None of these realities apply to China, yet almost every electronic device, major infrastructure project, deep sea water port that Africa has today, in one way or another, has been built, supported, or enabled by China. You may also recall from an earlier video that I made how China had already taken the step to remove all trade tariffs from products from 53 of the 54 African countries, allowing goods to enter the Chinese market duty-free. That kind of good faith track record is the kind of thing we can point at to say why we can trust China when they say they want to do something with Africans. To put this in context, China-Africa trade has grown by about 6% in the past year alone, reaching record levels. This is not symbolic. This reflects a real expansion in economic ties. And following on from my previous video about China entering the African car market, we are now seeing Chinese-backed car factories being built across the continent, from South Africa to Ghana, East Africa, all over. Since many African countries have very high import duties on vehicles, building these factories on ground means cars become even more affordable for consumers while keeping value inside the continent and creating jobs. It boosts GDP, strengthens local supply chains, and builds the manufacturing and value addition base that Africa has been demanding for decades. Thus far, China is not known for broken promises. Their track record is actually one of business, partnership, straight and fair trade. When the Sahel states kicked out the French and were renegotiating with new partners looking for who it could sell its resources to, guess who was leading the charge? Our good old friend, Ambassador Zhang Feng, who, by the way, speaks French as well as English.
du CSP au Niger. J'ai réaffirmé aussi
Africa has to seize this moment right now. The window is open, and opportunities of this scale do not stay open forever. China is putting an offer on the table, one that directly supports Africa's rise, industrial strength, and sovereignty. If African nations take this opportunity, unite behind value addition, and build the manufacturing capacity we have discussed throughout this video, it will break the entire system of neo-colonialism eventually. This is the moment, and Africa must act while the door is open. I would love to know what you guys think about this. Please give me your thoughts in the comments. But if you have nothing to say, would it be too much if you wrote the words "time to industrialize" in the comment section? It just lets me know that you like the video, you watched to the end, and you want me to continue producing content just like this. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.